The room was dim, lit only by the soft, orange glow of streetlights filtering through the half-closed blinds. She was closer than she'd been in weeks, her hands on my chest, her forehead resting against mine. I could feel her heartbeat, steady, rhythmic, and for a moment, everything felt like it used to. Like before the silence settled in, before the distance grew, before her smiles started feeling like apologies. Her fingers traced the line of my jaw, slow and deliberate. It was a gesture I remembered one she used to make when she meant I'm here without saying a word. Tonight, though, her touch felt different. Not colder, just careful, like she was handling something fragile. She didn't want to break. She leaned in, her lips brushing mine, soft at first, then deeper, more urgent. I closed my eyes, trying to lose myself in the taste of her, in the warmth of her mouth, in the familiar scent of her skin. But even with my eyes shut, I could feel it. A tremor in her hands, a hesitation in her breath, a space between our bodies that hadn't been there before. I opened my eyes, and that's when I saw it. Not in her kiss, not in her touch, but in her gaze. Her eyes were open, staring just past my shoulder, unfocused, as though seeing someone else in the room with us. Her lips moved against mine, but her eyes were whispering a name. One I couldn't hear, but I could feel it, a quiet echo in the stillness between breaths. She pulled me closer then, wrapping her arms around my neck as if to pull me back into the moment. But the distance had already arrived. I held her, my hands on the small of her back, feeling the rise and fall of her chest, the faint scent of someone else's cologne clinging to her hair, subtle but unmistakable. When she finally pulled away, she smiled, a small, tender smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I missed you," she whispered. But her eyes said something else entirely. I didn't reply. I just watched her turn away, slipping into the bathroom and closing the door softly behind her. The room felt colder without her in my arms, the silence louder. I stood there, staring at my own reflection in the dark window, a man holding on to a woman who was already halfway gone. And in the quiet that followed, I understood. Some goodbyes don't happen with words. They happen in a kiss, in a trembling touch, in eyes that whisper another man's name while lying in your arms. The truth was no longer hidden in the things she said. It was written in the space between her lips and her gaze, a story she couldn't bring herself to tell but couldn't hide from me any longer. The bathroom light stayed on for a long time. I could hear the soft rush of water, the gentle clink of a bottle set down too carefully. I didn't move. I stood by the bed, still dressed, still cold, my hands resting on the edge of the mattress where she'd sat just moments before. The sheets still smelled like her, like lavender and sleep and something faintly unfamiliar. A scent I didn't recognize, a scent that didn't belong in our bed. When she finally came out, she was wrapped in a towel, her hair damp at the ends. She didn't look at me. Instead, she moved to the closet, choosing a nightgown I hadn't seen in months, one I'd bought her on a weekend trip years ago. She slipped it on with her back turned, as if changing in front of a stranger. "Long day," she said softly, her voice flat, almost rehearsed. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Yeah, we didn't speak after that. She climbed into bed, lying on her side facing the window, the curve of her shoulders stiffed beneath the thin fabric. I stayed where I was, watching the rise and fall of her back, the way her breath hitched, just slightly before settling into a rhythm to be real sleep. This was our new normal, two bodies in one bed, separated by an ocean of silence. I walked to the window, staring out at the quiet street below. A single car passed, headlights cutting through the dock. I thought about earlier, about the way her eyes had looked past me, about the name they'd held without speaking it. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, a man slowly becoming a ghost in his own home. She stirred behind me, rolling onto her back. I turned just enough to see her face in the dim light. Her eyes were closed, but her jaw was tight. Her hands were clasped over her stomach, fingers laced together like she was holding on to something I couldn't see. I wanted to ask. I wanted to say, "Who is he?" I wanted to shake her until the truth fell out. But some truths are too heavy to hold once spoken, and I wasn't sure I was ready to carry what she'd been hiding. So I stayed quiet, letting the night stretch thin between us, watching her pretend to sleep while I pretended not to see the distance growing wider with every breath. The room felt smaller. Now the air tasted like words we'd never say. And in the stillness, I realized the hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the waiting. Waiting for her to tell me. Waiting for myself to ask. Waiting for the moment when the quiet between us finally broke and took everything with it. I didn't sleep that night. Lay beside her, watching the shadows shift across the ceiling as the hours slipped by. She breathed evenly beside me, but her fingers would twitch, occasionally small restless as movements that spoke of dreams I wasn't in. Or maybe they weren't dreams at all. Maybe she was awake too, lying there like me, trapped in a quiet we both knew couldn't last. Just before dawn, the room softened from black to gray. The eddies of the furniture began to emerge from the dark, and her face became clear again in the pale light. She looked peaceful and sleep softer than she'd been in months. And for a moment, I let myself imagine that last night hadn't happened, that the distance was just a phase, that her eyes had only been tired, not telling. Then she stirred, murmured something in her sleep, a name. It wasn't loud, it wasn't even clear, just a sigh wrapped around two syllables that weren't mine. But in the absolute stillness of that room, in the space between night and morning, it landed like a stone dropped into still water. I felt the ripple move through me, cold and certain. Her eyes fluttered open. She saw me watching her, and for a second, just a second, her expression froze. There was no smile, no good morning, no sleepy affection, just recognition, and beneath it, a quiet kind of dread. She knew I'd heard. Neither of us spoke. She sat up slowly, pulling the blanket around her shoulders like armor. The space between us on the bed felt wider than it ever had. Outside, a bird began to sing a soft, sweet sound that felt entirely out of place. I finally found my voice, though it came out quieter than I intended. Who is he? She didn't look at me, just stared at her hands, fingers knotting the edge of the sheet. It doesn't matter, she whispered. But it did. It mattered in the way she'd kissed me last night but hadn't really been there. It mattered in the unfamiliar scent on her skin. It mattered in the name she'd just sighed in her sleep. It matters to me, I said. She finally lifted her gaze. Her eyes were glassy, not with tears but with something worse, resignation. The truth had been sitting between us for weeks, maybe months. Now it was out in the open, naked in the dawn light, and neither of us could pretend anymore. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it, shook her head once. Some stories don't need to be told in full. Sometimes the ending is written in the spaces, in the eyes that whisper another name, in the kisses that don't reach the heart, in the silence that grows until it's all that's left out. I stood up. The floor was cold beneath my feet. I didn't wait for her to explain. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't slam the door. I just walked out of the bedroom, down the hall, and into the kitchen, where the morning light was beginning to spill across the countertops. I put the kettle on, the familiar ritual, feeling hollow now. Through the doorway, I could see her still sitting on the edge of the bed, silhouetted against the gray window. The kettle whistled a high, lonely sound. Some goodbyes are loud, some are quiet, and some happen long before anyone leaves the room. This one happened in a whisper, in a name that wasn't mine, in the space between her kiss and her truth. And as I poured the water, steam rising like a ghost between my hands, I knew the hardest part was over. The leaving had already happened. All that was left was the walking away.